yesterday in France, you had literally a 1 million man march. The whole country was protesting, and this is of course because of the pension reforms that Macron is putting forward. I mean, he's been trying to do this for a couple of years, right? And his brilliant idea is that, well, you shouldn't retire at 62, you should retire at 64. And also you have to pay in more so that you're able to get a pension in the first place, okay? And people there having none of it. I mean, I'm just going to show you a couple of the videos here. It's absolutely insane. Here's one of my favorites. Someone dumped fertilizer on the government building. Oh, man. You gotta trust the farmers to come through. Brilliant. People protesting against NATO also. So if I'm not mistaken, this is in Paris. This is l'Élysée, where, you know, so basically the French White House.
Sortons vite de l'OTAN!
Okay, sortons vite de l'OTAN. It basically means let's get out of NATO quickly. This is Paris. Let me read to you what the Guardian had to say, okay? So more than 1 million people have taken part in demonstrations across France as transport, schools, and refineries were hit by strikes in protest at Emmanuel Macron's unpopular plans to raise the retirement age by 2 years to 64. The Interior Ministry said 1.12 million people protested nationwide, with 80,000 taking part in the biggest rally in Paris. Trade unions said the figure was even higher. Police, they made a bunch of arrests, but it's pretty low actually, right? 15 before the march in Paris and then 15 after. Local and regional train services across France ground almost to a standstill, and public transport in cities, including Paris, was very disrupted, according to operators. Many primary schools closed for the day. About 40% of primary teachers and more than 30% of secondary teachers went on strike. Unions said the participation was even higher at 70% and, rather than 40% in primary schools. Public service radio and TV were also disrupted. Some theaters and museums closed. Some refinery shipments were blocked and energy output lowered. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I've been telling you guys for years, right? This is what I've been telling you. The 24-hour strike and protests in 200 towns and cities are the first big test for Macron since his re-election against his far-right rival Marine Le Pen last spring. So Macron says that he will deliver his key election pledge to change the French pension system. And like I said, opinion polls have shown that most French people oppose these proposals and view them as unjust. And it's interesting because I was literally going to tell you, even though most people oppose these, why did Macron win? Well, he won because they did the same crap like in the US, where you have to vote for Macron because if you don't vote for him, Marine Le Pen is going to win. And again, you know, Marine Le Pen, is she really that better? No. But it's the same kind of thing like, oh, you better vote for Clinton, otherwise Trump will win. You better vote for Biden, otherwise Trump will win. They push you into doing something that you don't actually agree with. And someone that they interviewed in this article said the exact same thing. Let me pull it up. A worker at a private insurance firm had voted for Macron's re-election. He said that, quote, Macron argues these pension changes were in his manifesto. But the majority of people did not vote for Macron for that reason. They voted to keep out Le Pen. Yep, they did. And you get shit like this. Macron remains conscious of the legacy of the Gilets jaunes, which is the yellow vest movement, the anti-government protest movement that erupted in 2018 from the ground up without trade union leadership, taking the government by surprise. It's uncertain whether the anger at pension change and the cost of living could swell the current protests. In 2019, a previous attempt at pension change by Macron was met with the longest running rail strikes in France since May 1968, and those plans for a pension overhaul were put aside during the COVID pandemic. Well, that's the official reason, but he was goddamn pressured into it and scared. Well done. This is what the hell I'm talking about. You know, this is what I'm saying is lacking in the U.S. because it's very normal, it's very common, and nothing crazy about protesting, right? In France. I mean, half the time, okay, I'm exaggerating, but half the time my teachers were on strike, right? And even if they weren't striking for themselves, they were striking for teachers in France, right? Because they work with, the unions. They have solidarity with other unions, even if it's a different field. This is something that's lacking, I feel, in England and even more in the US. It shouldn't. I know you have a lot of rail strikes in England, but you see what I just read to you from The Guardian about these protests in France. It was everything. It was primary schools. It was refineries. You need to shut shit down. This is the name of the game. That's the only way you can extract any concessions from the government and teach them a fucking lesson, right? This is the only time when workers are listened to, because workers create wealth. If they don't show up at the factory, the fucker sitting in the office, the CEO, is not going to go down to the production line and get shit moving. He's just not, because he can't, and he doesn't have the competences or the manpower to do it. And that's really when they start waking up to reality about who's running the show. But people forget that. They forget how much power they have. And I'm very happy to see this. So look at what they said here. The main question for Macron and the government is whether trade unions, who joined together in a rare and historic united front for the 24-hour strike, will harness public anger into a broader social movement and continue industrial action. Some high school students blockaded lycées on Thursday morning as the government fears young people in schools and universities could lead their own protests. Bravo les gars, bravo franchement. C'est ça qu'il faut faire. Tous les collégiens, tous les lycéens, c'est exactement ça qu'il faut faire. Mettez le feu. Mettez le feu. Je parie que la moitié de vos profs, ils sont en grève. Faites exactement la même chose. Young people need to do exact same thing in high school, in universities, because literally half their teachers are on strike. You saw what I just read to you. They need to form their own movements within this protest and also be leaders in this, right? Because it's not just about having refineries shut down. Students, they have to play a huge role in this. So again, I encourage people to do whatever it takes, to I don't want to say add fuel to the fire, but yeah, basically. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with it, with protesting. Again, this is something that's normal, right? It's normal, and it's funny because I read a lot of comments on under these videos, and people really admire how the French protest. It's true. It's true. That's what I've been saying, and this is another manifestation of that. So well done, and let this not just be a news item, but a source of inspiration for people that are watching outside of France, because people take for granted today, like paid leave or sick leave, or just literally having days off, having health insurance. How were these concessions extracted? They were extracted by protest movements, specifically socialist movements, who did this kind of industrial action, not just in France actually, but in Europe and in what people call Western democracies. These things, these concessions, they didn't just come magically. People had to fight for them, is what I'm trying to tell you. So this nothing changed from the 1930s to now. It's the same principle, and this is the only way you get things done. So really, I'm proud that people came together for this, left, right, center, whatever. That's exactly what the government doesn't want. They're afraid of that shit, right? They're very, very afraid of that. So well done, bravo, bravo, bravo.